Well, hello again, Paleo FX Tribe. It's Keith Norris, and I am back again for another round. You guys sick of seeing me yet? You probably are. Come on into Austin and get some of this face-to-face. That's all I'm saying. You got to come into Austin. If you're on the fence, get off of that fence and come on into Austin. All jokes aside, I have Dr. Dan Stickler right here, front and center. If you don't know who Dan Stickler is, you need to know who he is. Dan Stickler is the co-founder of Apeiron Center for Human Potential, and he's also a speaker, as you might guess, at Paleo FX 19. Dan, how are you doing, sir?
I am doing great. Looking forward to this weekend for sure.
Man, I am too. I train all year for this, Dan. I'm telling you, all year. So, Dan, tell us a little bit, without letting the cat totally out of the bag, tell us a little bit about what your talk's about this year.
Well, I submitted a couple talks to Michelle, and I let Michelle pick. And so she thought that a talk on peptides, using peptides in clinical applications, especially for the biohackers out there, peptides is a whole new realm. And she thought that would be a really stellar thing to add to the agenda this year for Paleo FX.
I think that was an outstanding decision on her part. I'm just saying. Because
that's why she's the CEO.
That's why. That's exactly that, and a whole lot of other reasons. I'm just saying. Yeah. And a whole lot of other reasons. I have no business being a CEO of anything other than in a gym. Maybe that's it. So, Dan, tell us a little bit about your background. How I know a little bit of it, but I think your background is super, super interesting, especially from where you came from to the types of surgeries you did in the past to what you're doing now. It's an interesting progression.
Yeah, it definitely was a progression. I started off really in the world of being a general and vascular surgeon, and kind of moved that very quickly into the realm of gastric bypass surgery. So I was a laparoscopic gastric bypass surgeon, did over 3,000 of those operations over a 10-year period, and just realized that that's not why I went into medicine. I went into medicine because I wanted to really improve quality of life overall, and it was not doing that. I mean, at first it seemed like it. First year or two, you really make a big difference in people's lives with the weight loss. But then a lot of weight regain occurred, and then you've got the weight regain along with the complications of the surgery on top of that. So I realized it wasn't quite what I wanted to do, and it took me a while to come to that conclusion. But in that process, I discovered anti-aging medicine, which was really about optimizing the human in a sense of healthy people too. So whether you're sick or healthy or whatever, this had an option for you. And then we have kind of progressed that model over the last, it's been almost 15 years now that we've been progressing this model. And we moved into this world of what we call precision performance medicine, which is really about it's all these people that attend Paleo FX, N of one biohackers. I mean, that's the crowd. And that's really where medicine is now. This is where medicine should be, is in the N of one state. We're no longer looking at medicine from a population-based whole and saying, okay, well, what's good for the population is good for you. It doesn't work that way. And we have all these technologies now that we can test the individual responses to things and really identify individual interventions. And that's the precision aspect of what we call precision performance. And performance is not about just being an athlete or an executive or whatever it is. Performance is about performance of the human system. So looking at the system as a system, essentially, the human body as a system, and applying systems-based approach to that in a complex systems view is what we've created. And in doing so, we've been able to fine tune. So, everybody has this orb of probability of who you are. And currently in medicine, we'll do blood tests, stool, physical exam, interactive piece, and we can narrow down that orb of probability. But then you start adding in genetics and epigenetics, and you start adding in biometric monitoring devices. And suddenly we can get down to this really fine-tuned approach to first identify who you are, and then to look at what interventions are going to create the outcomes that are ideal. And we measure that on an individual basis, not as okay, well, let's do this and just run with it. We always do things. I mean, the first thing I ask people when they come in with a supplement list or a medication list, and I'll say, you have to answer 2 questions. Why are you taking it? And what are you measuring to see if it's doing what you think it's doing? If they can't answer those 2 questions, we mark it off. And we may add it back once we identify those, but that beginning, most people are taking things and really aren't sure why they're taking them or what they're measuring with.
Right. This approach, I mean, should be universal. Of course, it's not yet. How long, and I know you don't have a crystal ball, but how long would you think that it will take for this methodology to trickle down to where everybody is utilizing this methodology?
Well, we're taking a different approach because this is a whole new paradigm for people to shift to. Well, it's not shifting a current paradigm; it's creating a whole new one. So, what we're doing is we're building it from a grassroots standpoint. That's the only way we can see change. I mean, taking it to the big organizations isn't doing it. So, start off with the grassroots, and what we've done is we've developed a coaching academy. We have 250 coaches now worldwide that are trained in this model with our online training. About 30% of those are physicians. So we're hitting across the coaches, dietitians, psychologists, physicians, chiropractors. I mean, across the board, we're attracting this group of people with a common kind of philosophy of, this whole system's broken, and it's not about fixing it. It's about, let's create something that was designed around the human system from the get-go rather than try to fix something.
Right. And for someone to come into your coaching program, what kind of prereqs would they need?
A passion for a new paradigm. That's pretty much it. I mean, we have health coaches that will absorb this material better than some of our physicians. So it's new material for everybody. Now, if you have a medical background, you have a little bit of a leg up as far as the learning curve is concerned, but it's still all new material that we're teaching in the realm of genetics and epigenetics and this systems-based approach.
Right. And your coaches are positioned to be intermediaries between the client and yourself, or the administrating doctor. Is that how it works, or is there a different?
Well, it's a combination. I mean, we're setting up medical centers. So we have a medical center in Asheville, North Carolina. We have one here in Austin. We are opening one in Sarasota and one in DC in the next year, and we're opening London in the next year. We just made a trip to London, and they're excited about this model over there for sure. And so the medical centers are designed to support the coaches, but the coaches are all independent, and they can function independently as lifestyle coaches for sure. But a lot of the problems is people that go to physicians are reluctant to tell the physician that they're seeing any alternative care provider in any way, coaches, dietitians, whatever they're doing. They're reluctant to tell them because they're afraid of the judgment that they're going to get for doing so. Well, what we wanted to do is have a kind of a worldwide philosophy of people teaching similar type of approaches, where we actually have the medical centers supporting those out there in the coaching world rather than being against those out there in the coaching world.
Right. Let's turn this talk a little bit more towards peptides. So, Dr. Stickler, can you, for people who may not even know what a peptide is, can you first off define that?
Yeah, peptides are basically amino acid sequences. So all the proteins in our body are made up of amino acids. So they're a chain of just stringing together amino acids, just like how we make muscle and everything else, muscle and bone. They're amino acids strung together to form a protein. Peptides are short amino acid sequences, and they're generally less than 50 amino acids long. Some of them are short as short as 3 amino acids long. Mm-hmm. And they work as signaling molecules. They work as hormones. They have all different effects in the body. And even though they've been around for quite a while, they're coming into clinical practice like nothing I've ever seen. I mean, it's a true explosion, to the point that I am fully convinced that peptides are going to supplant pharmaceutical industry and possibly even the nutraceutical industry within the next 5 to 10 years. And the reason I say that is because peptides have been able to dial down interventions to such fine tuning and such precision that we've never seen before. And generally, they're safer. They're safer than even some supplements as far as the body's concerned, because the body recognizes them as proteins that the body already makes. And there's regulatory systems built in, so we can enhance the systems where there's deficiencies, or we can enhance the systems to give them a little boost. But if it goes too high, it just downregulates the system. So there's a lot of checks and balances put into place with this, but we're seeing profound effects across the board. I mean, we have peptides for weight loss. We have peptides for performance, so to build mitochondrial biogenesis and increase your endurance. We have ones that will increase your muscle mass and bone density. We have ones for sexual function. We have ones that are really in clinical trials now for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Even ADD and cognitive enhancement. I mean, it just goes across the board. One of my favorite is BPC 157, which is an amazing peptide with healing the body. It will heal musculoskeletal injuries like nothing I've ever seen. It is the best intervention I have found for gut dysbiosis or leaky gut or any gut problem that I've seen. BPC seems to fix it just very quickly too. And it even has neuroprotective effects. So BPC is by far one of my favorite, and it's one of the few peptides you can take orally. See, the downside of most peptides is they either have to be a nasal spray, topical, or injection, and most are injections. But this is one that can actually be taken orally.
Right. And what are the legalities surrounding peptides? Because I know this comes up all the time. There's a lot of gym lore out there, and we'll get into the difference between like SARMs and steroids, and there's just lots of confusion out there on that side of it.
Yeah, there's, peptides kind of came onto the market as a research chemical. So what happened is a lot of these research chemical companies, they would take some of the research that was being done or that was abandoned by some of the pharmaceutical companies that were in the peptide world. And they said, oh, well, we can sequence these because peptide sequencing is actually fairly easy if you have a peptide sequencer, and they're inexpensive, which one of the problems that we've run into with peptides is there's not a lot of human trials because there's not money to be made there. Right. Peptides, you can't patent something that the body already makes. And so they have to find a way to create a modification of it in some way that creates a change in the molecule so that they can patent it and then make money off of it. They're doing that there's a new cream called dihexacream, which is really powerful for really enhancing learning and memory and nerve regeneration and dendritic growth in the brain. And it's funny because they kind of abandoned that one because it was too close to normal for a peptide that they couldn't patent it very well.
Right.
So the pharmaceutical company kind of ditched that one, and now they're trying to add different attachments to it to see if they can make it even more effective. But by itself, it's amazingly effective. But that's what we're running into, is a lack of a lot of human trials. Now, that doesn't stop the biohackers out there from using them. I mean, you can go on places like Peptide Sciences right now, and you can order a slew of injectable peptides. They don't tell you how to use them or anything, and it says right on there, not for human use. But a lot of the biohackers are out there doing it. You can go to the Reddit threads and read all about how they're doing it. I'm not a big fan of of online buying stuff online without being under some kind of medical supervision. Even though these are fairly safe, you can really get yourself into trouble with them. But the US and Australia are the only two countries that actually have pharmaceutical grades of this, and you can order them from pharmacies. So physicians can actually order peptides from pharmacies. And there's about 40 peptides that are available on the US market, which it's a small number overall because there's over 7,000 of them currently being researched and studied. But they're 40 highly effective peptides, and we're adding some every day to the mix. It's pretty amazing.
Now, for someone who would like to explore using peptides, how would one find a practitioner who is versed in using peptides other than just word of mouth or going those routes?
Yeah, I mean, that's tough because there's not a lot of practitioners that are well versed in peptides right now. It's a small handful of people, and there's a lot of people dabbling into it. They've gone to a weekend course, and now they're doing peptides. it just, it's kind of a Wild West show out there. So do your research on who you're working with, how long they've been doing it, what their success rates are, and understanding that there are pros and cons to everyone that you do. And if they're telling you it's all positive, then they're probably not sure what they're talking about with them.
Right. Right. And if you're in Austin or Asheville, like Michelle and I, and we're lucky enough to be close to Dr. Stickler and Apeiron, there's a start.
There's a start.
There is a start. But otherwise, back to Apeiron, and if somebody is not in Asheville and somebody is not in Austin, or do you do distance consulting?
I don't. Some of our coaches are trained in peptides, though.
Right.
I actually, we have our online training course, which is about 90 hours of training in genetics, epigenetics, and systems-based approach. But we also have an add-on course on peptides. It's pretty much it's a 6-hour course. We don't go into the deep science of the peptides, but we go into clinical application of all of this stuff. So it's actually how are peptides used? What kind of outcomes are we looking for? How do we measure the effect? So we have a nice 6-hour course on about 40 or so of the currently available peptides. So we've put that together just recently, and it's something we're pretty excited about. And it's perfect timing for it with me giving the talk at Paleo FX as well. Right.
And just as an example, to use a pharmaceutical versus a peptide, can you discuss what the difference between SARMs and steroid would be? Just an example that most people can kind of wrap their heads around.
So SARMs is a different class. SARMs are molecules, and some of the SARMs, SARMs are specific. They will focus on stimulating androgen receptors, or anabolic receptors, essentially. So they're like testosterone or some of the synthetic derivatives of testosterone. They'll get into a cell and they'll go into the nucleus and they'll activate transcription of genes that are relating to growth, the anabolic effect. Now, the cool thing about SARMs is that SARMs don't have an androgenic effect. And this is why we're seeing a lot of this. A lot of female athletes are using SARMs, and they're getting tested positive in performance enhancing drugs, because SARMs are illegal in professional sports, where they'll get a nice anabolic effect. So all the muscle and bone effects of testosterone without the androgenic or the male pattern effects. Right. That's why SARMs are becoming so popular. And a lot of guys will stack testosterone and SARMs to really enhance that anabolic effect. We do have one SARM that is available through the pharmacy, which is LGD 4033, which is a highly effective selective androgen receptor modulator, and it's wonderful to stack with other things. So it can be done with those. Now, to give you an example, really, of the difference between where we've gone from pharmaceuticals into peptides, like for years, IGF or growth hormone, recombinant growth hormone was used pretty commonly in the anti-aging industry. And what we found was that there were complications associated with that for long-term use. And it wasn't really the best approach, because we were overriding the body's systems of managing this. Now the popularity has shifted to what we call growth hormone releasing hormones. So these are peptides that we can inject, and what it does is it enhances. So growth hormones secreted in a pulsatile pattern. So there's usually 2 large pulses at night, a couple of small pulses during the day, a big one right after exercise. What we found is that using growth hormone releasing hormone really amplifies the height of those pulses. So you can get an enhancement of it. But we also found out that there are receptors throughout the body for growth hormone releasing hormone. We thought that, it was only affecting the pituitary in the brain and causing more growth hormone release. But our muscle cells, our bone, some of our organ systems, they actually have growth hormone releasing hormone receptors there. Same with like ghrelin, which is the growth hormone releasing peptides. They stimulate the ghrelin receptor. We have ghrelin throughout the body. We have IGF-1 throughout the body, receptors for it. We have growth hormone receptors throughout the body. And all we were focused on for so many years was give growth hormone so that we can increase IGF-1. And we missed the whole systems-based approach of how to use this in a really healthy and optimal way. So now the focus is more on really looking at this as a complete system rather than trying to override systems in place.
Are there any peptides that could be used either in lieu of or conjunction with insulin drugs for, say, for a type 1 or type 2 diabetic over and above lifestyle intervention?
Yeah, there's several peptides that will work with insulin sensitivity. You know, one that's really interesting that have to mention because, you know, we're in a ketogenic world right now. But it's a non-peptide molecule called TTA. I can't remember the full name of it, but TTA has this strange thing where it will upregulate a gene. So here's where we bring back in the genetics and epigenetics piece of it, but it upregulates PPAR alpha on fat cells. And a lot of people who have trouble getting into ketosis have genetic variants of PPAR alpha, and we can actually test for that variant. But I've seen it in people that they're like, I'm eating 70% fat and I can't get my ketones up and everything like that. You can give them some TTA and all of a sudden they're there. But what TTA does is it tells the fat cells that you're in starvation mode. So it actually mimics calorie restriction for the fat cells. Even if you're eating to equal calorie intake, you can still trick the fat cells and actually get them to burn. We have other things like AOD 9604, which is a fragment of growth hormone, but it only affects two areas of the body that we know of, and that's abdominal fat cells and cartilage. And it's highly specific. So, you know, growth hormone is this big, like, think of it as a ball of yarn with multiple keys attached to that ball of yarn. And every different cell type in the body has a match for those keys. And so we can take a segment of it and say, okay, well, this piece here will activate this area here. It'll unlock this lock. And what they found is like they call it FRAG 176 or AOD 9604, was found to be very specific for fat cells. Now, it didn't translate well into human trials from the mouse trials, but I still see about 50% of the clients that use it have really profound effects with fat loss on their abdominal girth, for sure, with the AOD. And they're also injecting it into joints and getting cartilage regrowth. It's pretty amazing stuff.
Wow, this is incredible. And I think it's so very cool that, like you said, they are so pinpointed and with so little, it seems, in the way of adverse effects.
Well, and that's the real advantage. And that's why I'm saying that I made that statement at the beginning, that I really see peptides, the way they're coming on so strong, that they're going to start to supplant many of the pharmaceuticals, and then even some of the nutraceuticals in that realm, just because they're very specific for body systems, and the outcomes are just incredible with them. Right.
And just to clear up some gym lore, a SARM is not a peptide, or
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that they tested for SARMs.
Oh, yeah.
What is it that they test for? What is
I don't know. I mean, you know, they're constantly playing catch up, especially with the peptides right now.
Right.
You disappeared there, Keith.
Oh, am I still here? Hello. I'm here. I can
You still
see
there?
you. Yeah, I'm here. Your side or my side? Hang on, folks. We'll get Dan back if he's. I'm not sure if it's my side or his side. It looks like it's his side, but. Dan, are you there, brother? We'll see if Dan can sign out and come back in. But wow, what an interesting discussion. Hey, Dan, are you back? Are you back, Dan? Dan, are you back? Let's see if he comes back in. Hopefully he will.
Are we back? Are we still live?
Frank Staunch, I'm going to tag you in this, and I want you to meet Dan Stickler when you come to Paleo FX. You and him, two peas in a pod. You guys need to talk.
Can you hear me?
Hopefully, Dr. Stickler will be back. And I will say, too, it is very cool to have Mr. Stickler just living about 3 miles from me in downtown Austin. Very cool. Not only is it good to, hey, he's back.
Can you hear me now?
I got you, brother.
All right.
All right. So we were talking about what it is that is being tested for whenever whenever WADA tries testing for SARMs.
Yeah, it's interesting because the peptides they're playing catch up with right now.
Right.
A lot of professional athletes, especially, were using BPC 157 because they couldn't test for it. And a lot of peptides, because they're made by the body naturally, it's hard to really tell whether somebody's taking something or not. But I read a recent post that WADA got somebody for BPC 157, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, this is a peptide that helps them to heal and recover.
Right.
And they're calling it a performance enhancer. It drives me crazy with their philosophy on this. But yeah, I mean, the Ostarine and LGD, GW501516, which is good for VO2 max. These are common ones that are being used. CrossFit athletes the last 3 years have been testing positive for them. So it's been something that is very commonly used, had been commonly used until the testing started coming up positive. So now a lot of people are staying away from those, and kind of the new ones, they'll try the new ones for a couple months until somebody gets nailed for them, and then they kind of back off.
Right. It's the cat and mouse game that's been going on since the 50s, really, and before that probably. But yeah, I agree. And not to go down the moralistic rabbit hole of, should drugs, quote unquote drugs, big quotes, be allowed in professional sports. I mean, it is a professional endeavor, and these are adults, presumably. And no one discounts an actor's ability if that actor takes acting classes or is in some way enhanced. It drives me nuts. Let's not go down that rabbit hole. It drives me absolutely crazy. But speaking of enhancement, one thing that I find curious, and I think people would be very interested in, is the peptide that actually causes you to tan.
Yeah, melanotan 2. It's sometimes called the Barbie drug, and you can find some anecdotal negative reports online of people who got skin cancer and everything like that. But I think if you read those, if somebody was going to a tanning bed as well as doing that, so I use melanotan, and you can see I've got a nice little tan here. Being in Austin, I can get a full summer tan in like 4 days, with using this, and so it's highly effective in that regard. And I don't use it for the vanity of being tan, although I like being tan. The thing for me is I will not wear toxic sunscreens. Just not going to happen. And I love being outdoors here in Austin most of the year. And especially with my bald head, I will tend to burn very easily. So by having the melanotan, I actually create a natural sunscreen because it activates my melanocytes and causes me to have a natural tan, which is really cool. But the other thing that people overlook with melanotan is that it has a profound effect for people with chronic inflammatory response syndrome, like chronic mold issues and chronic Lyme issues. What they tend to do is when you go into that chronic inflammatory response state, it really tanks your alpha MSH. And when alpha MSH goes down, you get all these symptoms of low libido, fatigue, immune system disruptions, all this other stuff that goes along with it. And you can take melanotan too, low dose, and it can actually mitigate all those symptoms.
Right.
And then you add another peptide, which is VIP. You have a VIP nasal spray you use that actually helps the body rid the body of the toxins and the infections, which is amazing to think about, the fact that we can do this. And I've talked to a couple people that have used melanotan with chronic mold issues, and they just report dramatic effects with it.
Interesting. Can you, Dan, quickly, can you speak to what kind of tracking devices that you like to use? So the lifestyle, so kind of switching gears from the peptides to the tracking devices.
Yeah, that's right. We have a biometrics panel for Paleo FX that I'm sitting on, but the Garmin Fenix 5 is by far our favorite. I mean, we give it to all of our clients to track their info. I mean, and people say, well, it's like Big Brother, but yeah, it's great because now you have somebody watching your health statistics. So we look at things like sleep duration, sleep patterns. We look at stress numbers. Stress has been a huge piece for us in tracking. We also look at movement patterns, and we look at oxygen saturations at night and things like that. So we can get a pretty profound deep dive into what makes you you. So we're getting labs periodically, but every month we're also looking into the biometrics and saying, okay, what's happening with you on a daily basis? So we do an intervention, and we can see individually what kind of an effect it's having in the system. The Oura Ring is also a really good option. And I know one of my other favorites, BioStrap, they're going to be having a booth this year at Paleo FX. I've kind of worked with them, doing some consulting to, just as volunteer consulting with them because I love biometrics, and they have one of the best sleep tracking devices I've ever seen. I mean, they really focused on developing a sleep tracking piece to their wearable that is really head and shoulders above most.
Right. I've got, there's a BioStrap and there's a Oura Ring right there. So, but one thing these devices don't have that you do have, and I covet that Garmin, by the way. I don't covet many things, cars, anything material, not really, but that watch. Yes. Tell us a little bit about how you changed your running stride and why, and what information you got that caused you to do that.
Yeah, that was very cool. I've been running for years. I mean, I run marathons and everything like that. And I started wearing the Garmin and tracking my running, and it kept telling me that I was in orange on my foot turnover, and my head oscillations were a little bit high too. So I started questioning, what is this that's saying that I'm not good in these areas. So what I found out is that Garmin, what they do is they track elite people, and they say, these are the best performers, have this kind of pace and this foot turnover and everything like that. So what I did is I shortened my stride to a little bit faster foot turnover and got into the blue, which was great on that. But I noticed my VO2 max went up, my times went down, my heart rate went down for the runs, the exertion on the runs. It just blew my mind that I actually had that. And it was all, for all these years, I was just doing it because I thought it was intuitive. Right. Started paying attention to the measuring of it and realized that, wow, this is really valuable. What gets measured gets managed. Exactly. Yeah. So that running style that you switched to sounds very much like the pose method. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Yeah, and I've been trying to. That's the other thing that the Garmin was measuring. I don't know if it's still measuring it, but was ground contact time, which was interesting because my ground contact time is terrible, and I'm a heel runner. I can get to the point where I'm almost a full foot strike, but I'm just struggling with getting to the toe running, which is. I guess the ideal, because when you get to that point, you really get the nice green and blue graph for your ground contact time. But I'm working on it. Right. Always improving. 1% better every day. That's what I say. That's right. Dang, I had oxygen saturation. That's what I wanted to get to. Yes. You could talk about number one, what is oxygen saturation? Number two, why should we be concerned about it? Number three, what is a good reading? Well, I'm going to talk to you about two things here because this is a great topic. One is that the Garmin, well, with the BioStrap, you can measure oxygen saturation all the time. So you have that option. But the Garmin, you can turn on with the Phoenix 5 only, not with the other ones. Phoenix 5X Plus. You can measure oxygen concentrations at night while you sleep. So you can see if you get desaturations from snoring or sleep apnea. But the other thing is it will show you oxygen adaptation at altitude, which is really cool. I played with it on the plane. It was kind of neat. But the other thing that I want to bring up with oxygen is we've been wearing a device called the Humon Hex, HUMON Hex. And what it does is it measures muscle oxygen concentrations going into the muscle and coming out of the muscle. So it's a little disc you kind of strap to the leg. Mike and I look like cyborgs when we go out and run because we've got all these straps and everything on us and wireless earbuds. But it straps on your leg and it's measuring your change in oxygen content, but how much the muscle is extracting oxygen. So essentially, it's measuring your lactate threshold. And it's pretty amazing how this works. They just did a big study on some CrossFit competitors in their competitions and saw how some of the best competitors actually maximize their oxygen utilization with the muscle. But for me, it was on sprints. So I had always done 30-second sprint, minute and a half, kind of slow jog or walk. And that was my routine. So I would do 3 miles of sprints. And what I realized is that my lactate threshold would change, or my point where the oxygen got into a oxygen debt level is where you want to get to with each sprint. But what I found is in my first couple sprints, it would take about 20 to 25 seconds. After about 4 or 5 sprints, all of a sudden, because my cardiac output went up, my vasodilation went up, I was delivering more oxygen. So I was actually having to go 40 to 45 seconds to get to that level. So I was not achieving really ideal training in that regard. And so that's one of our new favorite devices is the Humon Hex. We just started using it about 3 months ago and really love it.
Wow, what a great training bit of information to have.
Yeah,
man, it is training has come so far in the last, just in the last few years, but for sure in the last 20 years.
And for you can use it for squats.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. You can see how long it takes you to get to that oxygen debt in the quads while you're doing squats.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Let's talk about Neurohacker Collective, of which you are the medical director.
Yep.
And Neurohacker Collective, Neurohacker Collective will have a booth at Paleo FX. Say that 3 times fast. They will have a booth again at Paleo FX, and theirs is one of the more interesting booths to go to. Number 1, all the cool stuff they have, and number 2, all the cool people who hang around that booth because they're all biohackers and they're all, Daniel Schmachtenberger-like intelligence, which is freaking. I don't know what that guy measures out at, but he is off the charts, freaking high.
It is a team of polymaths, I will tell you.
It is indeed a team. And fill them full of coffee and wind them up and let them go. But Dan, you were saying before we went live that you guys have a new Eternus. Do I have that right? Formula?
Yeah, rumor has it that we might have some Eternus samples at the Neurohacker booth this year. So Eternus is an amazing formula. I mean, this is one that we've been working on for quite a while, and it is a mitochondrial health formula. And so what we looked at was a full system approach to mitochondrial health. So you know how I do with the health of individuals. We kind of looked at it as the health of the mitochondria. So what does it take to optimize that? Most people, they're taking nicotinamide, riboside, or NMN and thinking, okay, well, this is going to do it. Well, current studies are suggesting that might not be the best way to go. And so what we did is we kind of looked at all the things that support the system. Just kind of like what we did with Qualia was what supports the brain in the cognitive realm. And Eternus is just amazing with what it's doing. And, it's weird because some people have kind of profound effects with it. Other people don't. And you're really not, we don't expect it to have a overt sensation of anything, because
Right.
it's really just kind of supporting that mitochondrial health. But performance should definitely increase with it over time. But I have to tell you, when I take it, I notice a real focused calm. It has a calming effect, and a lot of people that I have talked to have experienced the exact same thing with it. So we got to try that. We got some cool new formulas. We get to try them out in about 6 months before they hit the shelves.
Great.
But yeah, this Eternus is a real game changer, I think.
Excellent. I can't wait to try that.
Yeah.
You guys hold some back for me.
We will.
All right. Dan, I could keep you on for another hour easily, but I will corner you at Paleo FX and pepper you with questions.
Absolutely.
All right.
I think you're quizzing me on one of the panels too. So
yeah. Oh, cool. Good.
Yeah.
Good. It'll be all about me, all my questions. All right. Dan, thank you very much for coming on and hanging out with us today. Cannot wait to see you and hear more about peptides at your talk at Paleo FX. And as well, make sure, everybody, that you go by the Neurohacker booth and check out the maybe new samples that they may have over there. Be sure to check that out, hang out and talk with the gang there, and be amazed at the intelligence level. Every time that I hang around that group, I'm just like, wow, okay, I am really punching above my weight class hanging around this group. All right.
Take some more qualia, Keith.
Is that it? I think. Oh, if that were the only thing I would have to do to increase this IQ. All right. But that's a step in the right direction for sure. Dan, thank you very much for coming on. And I can't wait to see you and Micra at Paleo FX. It'd be very good to see you people again.
All right. Thanks for having me, Keith.
All right, brother. Take care.
Yep.
And for everybody out in Paleo FX world, Michelle in the next room is getting ready to go live as well. So I'm going to sign out so she can get on. We'll see everybody else later. See you at Paleo FX.